management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so glad that you could join us today. We are live from Boca Raton, Florida, and we have another wonderful program for you today. So if you are a baby boomer, perhaps, and you've seen your parents needing care as they age and worried about how the money was going to last, or if you didn't have the money and wondered how you were going to pay for your parents' care. Maybe you've seen that. Maybe you haven't, but even as an aging baby boomer, you wonder about those kinds of things. If that's the case, this show is for current caregivers and future caregivers and baby boomers who are aging. So that encompasses a lot of people. And it's going to be a great show because we're going to be talking today to an expert in the field of financial planning who's going to answer all of our questions about how we can pay for our long-term care. So I'm going to be very happy to have Bill Miller with us. Bill is a certified financial planner in the Boca Raton area. He has his own firm. He is an awesome person. He has 32 years of experience in the financial industry field, so he's very well qualified to be on the show today talking about financial planning. Bill has, in addition to a certified financial planner designation, he also has a designation of a chartered life underwriter, a chartered financial consultant, and an accredited estate planner. So he has many specialties that he can help people with, and he does help a lot of people. He does presentations in and around the Boca Raton area to various organizations, helping people and answering those questions and educating people on the necessities sometimes of long-term care. And so I'm very happy to introduce to you today Bill Miller, and he's here in the studio with me. Hi, Bill.
Hi, how are you, Marcia?
I'm good. Thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, this is such a hot topic, and, you know, as the baby boomers are aging, they do think about those things, and they think about their parents, and sometimes they struggle taking care of their parents and how they're going to pay. So I guess the first thing that I'd like to bring up is what is long-term care, because believe it or not, I still talk to caregivers who, or even older people as they're aging, that say, oh, well, my long-term care, Medicare will take care of me, right? Have you probably heard that along the way?
Very often.
And people don't understand that, no, Medicare is not going to take care of you long-term. And we want to talk about long-term care, and basically, in a nutshell, for people to understand what this is about, explain what long-term care is.
Sure. Well, it probably conjures up a thought of an elderly person in a nursing home or some type of aging process that's going on with the individual that's causing them to need rather severe care. But you might be surprised to know that approximately 1 in 5 working people need some type of long-term care due to a chronic illness during their working years. So it does strike more than just the elderly. And particularly what long-term care is it's custodial care by its very nature. It's not the acute care that you might think of when you're in the hospital undergoing surgery or even recovering from surgery. It's the custodial type of care when one can't bathe themselves, dress themselves, maintain their basic daily activities of living. And in some cases, when someone's cognitive skills diminish, long-term care becomes needed.
Yeah, becomes really important for those people. There's a lot of questions I want to ask you, but I guess one of the most pressing ones is, when should people buy long-term care insurance, and who should buy it? Because maybe it's not for everybody.
Right. And, when we think about long-term care and structuring it as a potential planning need, we look at it in the context of an overall plan, always. Some people don't need it because their net worth may be significant enough, particularly their liquid net worth may be significant enough to where they can finance it out of their own savings and investments. Others may be at a level of capital where they may qualify for something we'll talk about a little bit later, perhaps Medicaid. So it really depends on the nature of the person's circumstances. That's why we have to really begin with a proper planning discussion. But for the most part, people that generally fall in the category of somewhere around $500,000 to up to a couple $1,000,000 tends to be a sweet spot for people that may need to start thinking about the planning for long-term care.
So that is their assets you're talking about.
That's their assets, and the age that they probably want to start thinking about this is perhaps as early as their early 50s. I think that some might even begin to look at this as my wife and I did in our 40s because of some family history dynamics that were at play. But typically, by the time you're in your early 50s, that's a great time to start planning around this particular contingency because the pricing starts to get rather costly when you wait into your 60s.
Right, so the sooner you purchase it, the less expensive the premiums are.
That's correct.
Uh-huh. And you do have experience in your family, which we're going to talk a little bit about. So that's why I love that you're here. You're talking to us from a professional point of view for financial planning, but you also have the experience on the caregiver and talking about what it's like to be part of a family situation. And certainly you do have that to add. And I want to say to you, what about people that don't have the $500,000 point? You talked about the $500,000 point. I mean, they're going to get Alzheimer's too, probably. Mm-hmm. Is it out of the question for someone that has less than $500,000 to purchase long-term care, or is it just what's recommended because of their budget or maybe because of their other financial circumstances?
Yeah, you hate to draw hard lines with respect to assets or capital, but what we find is that when someone has assets in that level of $500,000 or less, they may be able to get in touch with an elder law attorney or perhaps be in a position to talk to someone like a financial planner to reposition or spend down their assets to where Medicaid can become a viable solution. And Medicaid really is the single largest payer of long-term care costs in the country. So for that reason, it may be superfluous to buy insurance when Medicaid may be the
better route, depending on the case. Right. And then people who are very, very wealthy, they self-insure. Like you said, they don't really need to buy. I know in many years, long-term care has been out, but it's not something that it's been out terribly that long. About how many years has this particular vehicle been out?
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to say when I started in the insurance side of the industry back in 1992, I would say that mostly captive insurance agents, that those are agents that worked within singular companies, not independent advisors like we see more today.
Big companies.
Big companies. Distributed, they were the primary distribution channel for long-term care insurance. So I would say really that took hold around the late 1980s. And I guess we're going back, what is that, almost 40 years ago?
Okay.
Before we really started to see the evolution of that product. Fast forward to today, and most of those products aren't sold anymore, and the entire industry has gone through such a seismic shift in the way that the delivery of long-term care products insurance are being sold.
Yeah, I experienced that myself because I have a parent who asked me, should I get long-term care insurance? And she had, it's my mom, and she had an opportunity to buy it, probably on a less costly basis because it was a group through a postal union. And I told her, I said, get it and get it all. Get everything. Get the inflation rider. Get for home health. Get it for nursing home. Get it for assisted living. Right? So she did, and it turned out that unfortunately she didn't get. Fortunately she didn't get Alzheimer's, but unfortunately she did get cancer. And but still, my sister still became a caregiver for her for the day in and day out. But the point is, when it was lucky for her, she got it through the postal union, then offered it as a group. But so many of those insurance companies that were offering long-term care, and it was pretty inexpensive, back then, right? They stopped doing it. After so many years, they stopped writing it, and people couldn't get long-term care insurance. And they said through the news, media and all that, is because they didn't expect this many people to have so many claims, and they were losing money on the policies. Is that right?
That's exactly right. There were a couple of factors at play. One was that the actuaries that set the pricing for these products never thought that people would live so long. And they also didn't realize that as people aged, they would hold on to these products. In other insurance product lines, the lapse rates, as we call them, the amount of policies that were lapsing were significantly higher than in the long-term care insurance industry. And it became a reality as years passed and we move forward to the current times we live in now, that just about everybody that bought these policies years ago saw the value of holding on to them, and particularly as pricing changed. And so they didn't let them go. And today, that's a problem for companies who price the products at a time when they thought there wouldn't be that kind of high utilization, longevity, and not to mention the high cost of health care that's changed over the years.
Absolutely.
So all these factors have kind of converged to a point where we don't really recognize the industry from what it was 30, 40 years ago to what it is today. It's completely different.
Yeah, and probably one reason why now the premiums are so high, because they kind of got burnt back in the day.
That's
and
right.
now they're going to recoup and make it expensive. So what's a person to do, right? They have to plan, and things are expensive, and they have to look at that. And, it's a lot of questions about it. People sometimes, I have friends that say, should I get long-term care insurance or should I not? And, will I need it? And there's so many ifs, right? If you get sick, and if you live long, and if you don't have any other resources, and if you can't go on Medicaid, there's so many ifs. So when you are going to sit down and talk to somebody, I want to go to that as soon as we get back from our first commercial break, because you help people answer those ifs.
Yes, I try to. I certainly do.
Okay, so we're going to take our first quick commercial break, and when we come back, Bill Miller, Certified Financial Planner, is going to be talking to us about how to plan and when to plan. So stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia, Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and my guest today is Bill Miller. Bill is a certified financial planner here in the Boca Raton area, and we're talking about how to pay for long-term care. So, Bill, the first question that I'm curious about is when you have a client and maybe you've been working with them for a while, and maybe the topic of long-term care comes up, or maybe it doesn't come up, and you want to bring it up because it is part of a plan, like you suggested. So how do you start that conversation with a client about long-term care?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Marcia. I would say that long-term care to me connotes a sense of, again, of aging, of perhaps thinking of somebody in a nursing home, and it's not always that well received when we talk in that terminology. I prefer to use extended care, so we tend to talk more in that context when we talk to our prospective clients about thinking about this. And we also try to focus, as a great elder law attorney, Harley Gordon, who's an authority in this field, taught me many years ago. We sort of talk about the consequences that a family might face from an event occurring in one's life rather than the actual risks that we often hear about. The statistics are one thing, but most people don't really relate to statistics. They really relate to what the consequences that an illness or an injury or dementia might have on a person's loved ones.
Because people don't know if that's going to happen. And
That's right.
so many people say, gee, if I buy long-term care, what if I never have to use it? That's money that I could have used to buy a boat or left to my family or something like that. So it's a really difficult subject to talk about because it's a conundrum, I think, sometimes, you know?
It is, and I'll take it one step further. There's been some research, some psychological research that's been done that Harley Gordon, again, had mentioned in one of his books that I remember, that men tend to separate risk and consequences. They really disassociate the two. So whereas women tend to think of them one and the same. So when you talk to a man about the consequences that might arise from their illness or their needing long-term care or extended care, as I like to refer to it, and what it might do in terms of their not being able to fund their child's 529 plan or not being able to fulfill a certain retirement lifestyle that he and his wife had talked so much about. And you know, a man takes a lot of pride in making sure that he can fulfill these particular needs for his family. And it's not to stereotype a man and a woman that way, but a lot of research has been done about that. So when we talk to couples, we want to think about, you know, framing some of these consequences. And I think that people tend to relate to that better, and both sides, both men and women. And as a result, they take action, and they do actually find that it's more important to protect their lifestyle and take some initiative to put some of these programs in place, whereas the statistics might not drive that action.
So when you talk about frame the consequences, that's an interesting phrase. It sounds like you're telling them this is what could happen and it's not pretty, right? I mean,
Right.
This is the ugly truth. This could happen. You have those kind of conversations when you talk about consequences?
Well, as a financial planner, I talk a little bit about the emotional consequences that could strike a family that might relate to a spouse having to leave work, having to care. Perhaps some resentment might set in because the spouse is not able to fulfill his or her career objectives or needs. But I also particularly talk about the financial consequences of having to resort to pulling money out of intended accounts that would have gone towards other planning objectives. So, for example, having to borrow from a house unexpectedly for a long-term care event when the house was almost paid off, having to pull money out of an IRA that might not have otherwise been taxed for many, many years. So without proper planning, it doesn't necessarily mean that insurance is always the right solution either, Marcia. But without knowing that you've earmarked a particular asset to fund the ultimate expenses of a long-term care event, which can be devastating to a family, you know, those consequences can be very real and very far-reaching.
Wow. So that being said, how do people pay for long-term care then? I mean, does it Is it monthly? It comes out of a savings account? Is that what most people do? Or how does the logistics of it?
Yeah, and let me just answer that in this way. So we went over Medicaid, which is the largest payer source of extended care in this country. And then personal savings would be next. Okay, so most people don't actually buy insurance. They actually rely on their assets to cover this contingency, which they think may not really happen for the most part. Because again, statistics, 70% of people over the age of 65 will require some type of long-term care need over their lifetime. That's a pretty significant number, and yet it's surprising, but only 7% of the population has some form of insurance to protect themselves against this. So personal savings is next, and then Medicare, which is an area that has a great deal of misunderstanding that we can touch on if we have the time. But I think that how people really pay for it today is in one of those four ways, and most of our clients either really pay out of their assets, which we've earmarked for long-term care, or through some type of long-term care solution, which looks oftentimes very different than the traditional products that we've been talking about. Today's products are really quite different and unique to the ones that were sold
And they've
years
had
ago.
to evolve.
They've had to evolve.
Because of the times
Exactly.
and because of the situation. Are there any myths that people still think about long-term care that you have to set straight, that people think that what it is or what it isn't?
Yeah, well, aside from the fact that I think a lot of people confuse skilled care with custodial care, and they think that when they're in the hospital or recovering that perhaps they're going to be able to have their Medicare, continue beyond that period for custodial care, which is really a myth to debunk, because once you leave the hospital and you're now receiving that type of custodial care that doesn't require a nurse to administer, but maybe just a caregiver that might be from your home or from an agency of sorts, then Medicare stops. So basically, Medicare only covers the first 100 days of a skilled care need. And it pays 100% of the first 20 days and about 80% of the 21st to the 100th day.
If you get to 100 days. And
If you get to
and
100
that's
days.
something that I think a lot of people assume, that they're going to be getting services all the way up, like they're entitled to it.
Right.
And I've talked to a lot of caregivers who, maybe the husband has Alzheimer's and he ends up in the hospital and now he's in rehab, right? And he's under skilled care and rehab. And she says, oh, this is great because I've got, another, 50 to 100 days that they'll take care of him, and I'm getting a respite because of it. I mean, she was and I had to say to her, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to get 100 days. And she was very surprised to learn that it's need-driven. It's not an automatic thing.
Right. Right. I think that the important point to make to your audience is that the real risk is the extended long-term event that occurs from an illness like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or a stroke or dementia on the cognitive side or Alzheimer's, where care goes well beyond the 100 days. Maybe Medicare will pick up the first 100 days, but after that, a family is really on their own. And I think that's the important gap that has to be addressed. And again, planning needs to be done up front to decide, is insurance the right solution, or is there a way to reposition assets to account for that gap?
Yes, true. So a question a lot of people wonder about when it comes to long-term care is that if I buy it and I'm paying month to month to month on it, do I keep paying for it after I start using it, number one? And the second part of the question is, can my premiums go up, or is it a set amount every month?
Right. So one of the flaws, if you will, of long-term care insurance as a product in the industry is that no company was able to provide a product that would not allow for price increases. The products were always able to be adjusted for pricing purposes. Insurance is regulated at the state level, and so when this product evolved, it was part of the, I suppose, the platform of of what was approved on a statewide basis was that the product's pricing could change. So that really is the real problem area of the industry today. For those that still have it, is they have no certainty of what they're going to be paying 5, 10, 15 years from now. We've seen major companies not only leave the industry who couldn't afford to maintain the coverage for new consumers, or I should say to provide products to new consumers. They certainly are going to honor the claims, hopefully, of the existing existing policyholders. But we've also seen a tremendous trend of those companies raising rates upwards of anywhere from 10 to 90%. So
wow, all the way up to 90 sometimes?
Yes.
That's quite a jump, especially for people that are on that lower end of the spectrum where they maybe have a history of Alzheimer's in their family and they think this is a good thing to buy because I might need it and it's probably likely that I will. And now they're paying the premiums, and the premiums all of a sudden go super high. And sometimes people actually stop paying, and which is a shame because they've lost all the money they've put into it.
Yes, exactly. And your other part of the question, they do keep paying for as long as they have the insurance. If they utilize the insurance and they're on claim, typically the policy will waive the premium on claim.
Yeah.
So they won't have to pay any more premiums. But this whole discussion about changing premiums is how the newer generation of products, what I refer to as linked products or combination products that combine typically life insurance and long-term care into a single product, it's really how that's evolved, because unlike traditional long-term care insurance, premiums can really be steady and fixed over one's lifetime, and oftentimes can be paid up in a matter of 5 or 10 years, and the person has completed their obligation.
So it's sort of like a hybrid product where
Correct.
It's a combination of not just a straight premium for long-term care, but you're mixing in some insurance element into it for life insurance, where it's a hybrid, right? And
Correct.
that's from what I understand.
That's correct.
And for the people who say, what if I never need to use it, they won't lose everything.
Exactly. In the traditional sense of the product, you pay as you go. If you never use it, generally speaking, barring some special riders that you might have purchased, like a non-forfeiture provision where you could get back some of the money you put in, you basically lose the money that you didn't use. Here you have the ability to have a much more flexible solution, because you're going to eventually leave money in the form of life insurance to your family if you never use the care. And you may even be able to cash out of the policy if your financial circumstances change, where you find that you just don't need to keep the insurance anymore.
Yeah.
So much more flexible, much more versatile. But like anything in life, you give up something. And what you give up is you give up the richness of the traditional policy's benefits, because really there's nothing more rich in terms of true long-term care benefits than what we saw years ago in the traditional policy design. And make no mistake, there are still companies that offer the traditional policy for that reason. Some very good companies that are very viable to look at in that market and in that space, but it's just very, very difficult to obtain it because of the stringent underwriting guidelines that have been put in place today.
So now people have choices. I mean, I guess the bottom line is people have choices, and that's a good thing. It's always good to have a choice. So our choice, which is not what I want to do right now, but our choice is made for us. We have to go to commercial break. And when we come back, Bill Miller, certified financial planner, and I will be talking more about caregiving and long-term care insurance. So stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to taking care of people with memory loss, and they take care of the caregiver too. Arden Courts has 10 memory communities right here in Florida and about 40 others across the United States. Arden Courts understands that families need education and need help, and caregiving is not easy, to say the least, so they're providing resources. And one of the resources they'd like to provide to you today as a family caregiver is a copy of this book. It's called The 36-Hour Day. It's written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace. It's a wonderful resource for people to learn more about dementia. The book is full of all kinds of topics related to different stages of dementia, what you can expect, what definitions are in there that you could relate to, and it's a great book. And all you have to do to get it is call the Arden Courts toll-free number, which is 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410. Call them, tell them that you heard about the free offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show, and they'll be sure to get your name and number and make a package arrive at your door ASAP. So again, give them a call, get the book. I highly recommend it. It's a great book to have if you're not a direct caregiver, but you have caregiving in your family. It's another great way for you to read and help in the situation where you may be able to support the person who is the primary caregiver just by the knowledge that you'll gain from the education in this book. So again, call 888-478-2410 and get your free copy of the 36-Hour Day book. So my guest today is Bill Miller. Bill is a certified financial planner with his own company, Miller Wealth Advisors, LLC, here in Boca Raton. He's been in practice 32 years, and he's an expert on financial planning with clients, helping them to understand what it is and what they need. So, Bill, thank you so much for being here. We've been talking a lot about you and your clients and how you help them and what you say to them. But I understand that, unfortunately, you have a personal connection to Alzheimer's and dementia in your family. Do you care to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do that, Marcia. So my wife's mother, who has been very involved in my life from the time that we were married back in 1995 now, so we're going back quite a number of years, almost 25-year celebration of our marriage.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And she's been very involved and very active in my life, certainly very instrumental to a lot of our family growth. And so it was really surprising and disheartening to find that when she entered her early 60s, that she began to show signs of both Parkinson's and some early stage dementia. And the dementia came on a little bit later, but we began to see that she wasn't walking as firmly as she had been. She was only 62 when she was first.
That's young.
Very, very young. When she was first diagnosed with Parkinson's, and the symptoms began to show more prevalently in the area of dementia a few years later, and so she really slowed down rapidly, and this was a woman that was really semi-retired. Her husband was a successful builder in the San Diego area. Also, same age, about 61 when this all happened.
And they were living in that area at the time?
Living in that area, planning to start an early retirement together, and had the resources to be able to really enjoy their retirement years. They love to travel, they love to take cruises, and suddenly everything stopped. And my wife, who I had convinced to move to Florida some years ago, began realizing that the time that she could spend with her mom was becoming more precious, and she began to travel more and more out there. And slowly we began to see what it was like to have a family member going through extensive care and not really being able to converse the same way. I feel awfully bad when I look back and I think about how I told my wife at times not to have such long conversations with her mom because, it took away from some time that we had together, and now she really can't have that kind of conversation with her mom anymore. So it's a hard pill to swallow, but something it sort of brings home a message that it can happen really at any age, and we're experiencing it firsthand.
Well, that's certainly something that no one expects to happen, in their family. And what you just shared, and thank you for sharing that touched my heart. The fact that you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how people progress through dementia, different forms of dementia, but in dementia in general, and what's going to happen, especially if you've never had that opportunity to experience it before. And if it's new in the family, you don't know how those long conversations, are not going to happen. And so not to fault you at all, because people go through this all the time, and people think the same thing, that, we just have to deal with it, and everybody deals with it in their own way, and nobody has a crystal ball. So you are not unlike a lot of caregivers who beat yourself up a little bit about saying, well, I wish I hadn't said that, or I wish I hadn't done that. But, don't beat yourself up, because it is something that is new, and you learn as you go. And that's how most caregivers handle it. You're learning as you go. Right. And unfortunately, your wife had to travel back and forth a lot, and that can become expensive with all the flights. And she probably went out there to help her dad, right, to help take care of her mom. So you can see that it does affect the family. So at what point then did you get more help? Because obviously things progress, and I don't think she's still on the West Coast still, right?
She actually is.
Oh, she is?
She's still on the West Coast, yeah. So Tanya's, my wife's Tanya is her name. Her stepfather is taking care of a lot of the care, but they do have professional help now. It's been some years now. She's now 69. So the dementia and the Alzheimer's related dementia has really progressed. And so thankfully, and I won't get too much into it, but we did have insurance for the family. So
long-term care insurance?
Long-term care insurance was put in place many, many years before.
Before she was diagnosed?
Before she was diagnosed. And so from a financial perspective, our family can really feel some peace to know that we don't have to worry about the financial consequence of all the care that she's getting. And she's getting premier care out in the San Diego area. She's getting home health care for about probably 10 hours a day. But her husband, my wife's stepfather, is very active in his role of managing her medications, taking her to and from doctor's appointments, really uprooting his whole life to be able to be there despite all that professional care that she's getting. It's really disrupted the flow of his day and life. And Tanya, my wife, goes out to meet him occasionally and coordinate all these caregivers. And the time that she's away, is time that she's not able to be with her son, with our son, and our daughter, who's in college, occasionally comes home. And so the emotional toll that it takes on a family is pretty significant. And most of all is just the loss of the relationship that I see between my wife and her mom. just tough to see that there isn't any deep storytelling or conversations that can be appreciated anymore, and it has to be rather, on the surface level of discussion. And hopefully, she's understanding those stories that she is able to share, and she's been terrific just being there as a support role for her. But it's tough.
That's one of the hardest things, that I'm very impressed that, you're doing this from afar and that your wife is doing it from afar. And it also impressed that, her stepfather is, doing so well and taking on this role. A lot of men shy away from this, they're not able to do it, or they feel they're not able to do it. And then there are others that, just do what is necessary. But it doesn't mean that it's any easier for one or the other, whether you can do it or you can't do it. It's just very, very difficult. But far away, your family is so far away, so it does make a strain on everyone. And it's hard to understand what's going to be needed in the future. But I'm very curious, since you are a financial planner and you have been for 32 years, were you instrumental in your mother-in-law getting long-term care when she was younger?
I was. As a matter of fact, my father-in-law, her husband, is a partner and has been a partner for a long time in a San Diego-based home building company. Years ago, I approached the company and I said, I think it would be wise to look at putting long-term care insurance in place through the company for the executives and their spouses. And so we had a meeting, and I can visualize the meeting in the conference room some 20 years ago, and we put the plan in place, and it was really something that I didn't think much of after it was put in place. I thought that it maybe would come into play when my mother-in-law or father-in-law got much, much older in life. As I've worked more and more in the industry and I see the effects of illness on people, I'm seeing that that's not the case, that these are real risks that we face at any age, and it's just very sad to see that she missed out on a lot of the opportunities that related to not just her personal travel and retirement, but the upbringing of grandchildren in the area. My wife has a brother that lives in San Diego, so
there's other family.
The other reason she stayed there is because she has some extended family there that are also terrific supporters and caregivers, and most of all, her husband has just been unbelievable. But boy, you sure hope that that can continue before his health isn't diminished or affected in some way. And that's the thing that
the stress on the primary caregivers.
You have to watch for that.
Monumental.
We watch out for him a lot, and we ask how he's doing, but it can happen.
Giving breaks every now and then, and
Yeah.
people step up and help and give
Exactly.
him some help and some breaks. I'm amazed 20 years ago that you got a company to offer long-term care for some of their employees, because that was sort of unheard of back then. And even today, I doubt that there are many companies that do offer long-term care insurance policies for their employees, because I don't know why. I mean, I think they should.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful benefit, and I wish more companies would do it.
Yeah, we probably don't have time on the show today to talk about it, but there might be some tax advantages for corporations to provide this type of benefit to some of their key executives. Certainly, what's unique about that opportunity is that you can carve out a group of people that you want to provide that to, and not fall under any anti-discrimination issues or problems that might arise, as you might find with health insurance. So it is not terribly uncommon, but you're right. Back then, it was not as common of a thing to see, and it just happened to make sense for the structure of that particular organization, and I'm glad we did it.
Right, because now you have the insurance helping with your family situation.
Very gratifying to see that, though I wasn't able to have a great impact financially on their lives, otherwise, that I had this one influence that I was able to make in the form of having long-term care insurance put in place for my mother-in-law, and I see what it's doing financially for the family, and that's pretty gratifying.
Yeah,
It
you're
really
going to
is.
have more peace of mind going
Yeah, that's-
forward that they do
yeah.
have this. Well, kudos to you for that. We're going to take our last commercial break, and when we come back, another member of your family is going to be joining us for a few minutes, and I'm
Sounds
excited
fun.
about that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, Caregiver Solutions Info Show. We've been talking about long-term care insurance with certified financial planner. I was going to say Ben Miller, but that's his son who's with us today, Bill Miller. And his son, Ben Miller, is now joining us, and he is here. Hi, how are you, Ben?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for coming by the studio today.
My pleasure.
So we're talking about your dad's work and what he does, and we're talking also about your grandmother and how she has dementia, right?
Yeah.
And I know you have some special talents that I've actually seen in my person. You like to write music and play music on a keyboard or piano.
I do.
Yeah. So I thought it was great that you use your music in a special way, especially when it comes to your grandmother. What do you do special for her?
So one of my grandmother's favorite things is to hear me sing and play on the piano. It makes her very happy. And because it's hard to keep conversation with her, one of the things that we can both do and get along with is my music. And sometimes I could sing a song and she could finish the line and she laughs and smiles and it makes her very happy. We also dance a lot together to Frank Sinatra, and it's one of our favorite things to do together.
Oh, that's so nice. So whenever you get together, you play for her and dance with her, but she still lives far away from you.
She
So
does,
do you ever
yeah.
do this like YouTube? I mean, on
So-
Facebook or anything?
So me and my mom try to send her videos a lot of my music that I'm working on, and once in a while we'll FaceTime her and I'll play for her. But a lot of the time me and my mom come out and visit her, and I sing with her at her house, and it just makes her happy. It brightens her day.
Aw, and that's so sweet. You can brighten her day. And when you're not singing and dancing with her, do you see a difference in her personality?
Can you say that again?
Yeah? Do you see a difference in her personality when she's
Yes.
not singing or dancing with you?
I think that she's happiest when we're singing and dancing together. Yeah, that's it.
And why do you think that is? What is special about music that does that, in your opinion? Because you've been playing for a long time.
Yeah, so music is different for everybody. It makes me very happy when I'm upset or I'm down. It just brightens your day, and it especially makes her very happy. And I think to see that her grandson sing for her makes her very happy as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. They say music is the universal language, right?
It is.
Yeah, so when people, especially with dementia and they're not talking much, they really can relate to that.
Yeah. So a lot of the older songs she can know the words better than me, believe it or not. Yeah. So it's definitely our best way of communicating. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really good. And so, Dad, how proud are you of this son, because he's got a special gift?
Incredibly proud of him every day.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. So, how old are you, Ben, if I may ask?
You can ask. I'm 16 years old. I'll be 17 in a few days.
In a few days.
Yes.
Well, happy birthday ahead of
Thank
time.
you very much.
And continue with your music. I've actually saw you for the first time performing for an Alzheimer's Association fundraiser
Yeah.
not too long ago here in Boca Raton.
Yeah.
And it was a fundraiser to make awareness for Alzheimer's, and it was like a contest, like a talent contest, and you were so good.
Thank you very much.
You just melted our hearts, and we just fell in love with you because
Thank you.
we know where your heart is, and it's in the music, and it certainly comes out. And your grandmother is blessed to have you in her life
Thank
to
you.
provide that for her. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So long-term care, what do you want to say to people in our last few minutes, Bill, about long-term care or about what we're talking about with caregiving?
How do I follow that act? I guess the takeaway from the discussion we've had today about long-term care that I hope that the audience remembers is that it's really the consequences that we have to all be thinking about to those that we care the most for. And that sometimes when we think about long-term care or extended care, as I like to refer to it, it's much more than statistics and the risks that we may or may not believe are going to happen to us. It's about thinking about the possibility, the great possibility, that all of the planning that we've done for so many years could be put at risk if we don't think about the financial ramifications to those that we really plan and hope to take care of in our lives. And if we
need to get you a little closer to the mic.
Sure.
There.
Yeah. So, sorry about that. So, all the planning in the world could be put at risk if we don't contemplate, at the very least, the consequences of what it could mean to a family if someone undergoes a very serious illness or as my mother-in-law has experienced, something very unexpected like a cognitive impairment that puts everybody's lives into a place that we would never have expected. And the financial costs of traveling out west, the financial cost to my father-in-law, had he not had long-term care insurance that I contemplate often, all these things kind of come together and make me realize that that this is perhaps a rather significant issue that everybody needs to talk about at the very least, and particularly talk about those consequences that that may be overlooked in a family's long-term financial plan, because it doesn't take much before everything gets turned upside down if somebody needs this type of extended care.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are true words. So you have an office in Boca Raton.
I do.
And if someone wants to talk to you more about what we've been talking about today, can they contact you?
They absolutely can. They may want to call my son and hear him sing for me because he's a lot more interesting, but they certainly can call me. My phone number is 561-613-0130. We just moved into some new offices at the Yamato Office Center at 1001 West Yamato, right in central Boca. And we would be more than happy to consult with anyone who just wants to address their financial planning needs and look at how long-term care might fit into the context of their long-term roadmap and plan.
Right, and even if long-term care isn't something that they might particularly need, you could actually look at the big picture and help them as they age with the regular financial planning that you do with your IRAs and your different things to see if your money is going to last.
Yeah, it's a component of an overall plan for sure, and sometimes it's not right for an individual to buy it. Sometimes it isn't necessary, frankly, and sometimes somebody really can't qualify medically for it because there is some requirements relating to the qualification of long-term care.
You know, we didn't bring that up earlier, but the underwriting, because I'm glad that you mentioned that, because people can wait too long. And they can wait until they've been diagnosed, which they're not going to qualify, or there might be an age limit, too, for the underwriters to say, we just can't take this risk.
Right, absolutely.
So another reason for people not to put it off, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much,
my
Bill
pleasure.
Miller, for being here today, and Ben Miller for being
Thank
here
you.
today. It was a pleasure having you both and talking about long-term care insurance, caregiving, and all the things that go along with it. You keep up your music, all
Thank
right?
you very
We're going to
much.
see you up in lights one day.
We really appreciate
Hopefully.
the opportunity as well, Marcia. It's been fun.
Yeah, it has been fun and very informative, too. Thank you for your expertise, and thank you all for watching. We're glad that you did, and we'll be back next week, same time, same place, for another show of Caregiver Solutions Info. Until then, don't forget, give somebody a hug because they need it, and so do you. So we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.
The opinions expressed